Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Nobbins and this is the second walkthrough of my virtual reality project featuring the sets from Space 1999. Um, as I showed in the first walkthrough, this project has got 5 scenes, 1 interior and 4 exterior, featuring the Eagle transporter and the launch pad. In this walkthrough though, I will be focusing only on the main mission and the changes that I've made since that last walkthrough. So, what's new? I've added the computer display, as you can see there on that wall. Now, I'm quite happy with the way the flashing glyphs turned out. The glyphs are actually pretty much exactly as they flashed on the TV show. The combination of glyphs is always the same in the TV show, but sometimes the order of flashing can be a bit random. But still, each combination of 3 or 4 glyphs is always the same, and that's what I've reproduced here. The graphic image here, I spent quite a few days poring through screen captures of the show, trying to find decent images which showed me what all these little icons were supposed to be. If we come over here and look at, if I bring up the menu and then show the screenshots from the TV show, here you can see a classic screenshot. So this is the sort of images that I had to work with, and you can get a rough idea of overall forms and shapes, but the detail is very difficult to capture from something like that. Luckily, I found a screen capture of a close-up photo of the display, but it was clearly a different scale model. I don't know, it must have been used in, I don't know why they had a different scale version, but anyway, in that version, you could see a little bit more detail and you could see some of the text that was on the display. Now, in that version, the proportions of the icons was totally different, but the overall layout was almost 95% the same. So where I couldn't see details in this sort of image, I used that other screen capture to make up the rest of the detail. So if I just turn these floating images off, and then I come up to here, and let's even stand on top of that. So for the most part, I think this matches quite well to what was on the TV show. In some cases, like those numbers that you see up there, and actually let me just back up a little bit and then teleport forward. So some of these numbers and so on were, a little bit made up. This UN symbol, I guess, was a little bit blurry, so I'm not sure how close I got that to the original. But for the most part, I think I've got a pretty close match to what was on the TV show. And likewise with these glyphs, I think for the most part, I've got pretty close to what they had. It's difficult to try and catch the flashing glyphs. You have to move back a bit. Also, I've got this nice subtle little reflection in the plastic, which you can see at this slight angle. Those little dials up the top, I think they turned out pretty well, considering again how blurry the images were. You can see the little vent up there on top. That's actually used inside the Eagle as well. So it might actually in the future be a good reference point for scale between this set and the Eagle set. I was also curious about the number 3 up there. I wondered if this was meant to be the 3rd mission control room. Who knows? So this desk here in front of us now, I call this the Lazy Susan desk. This is where the computer guy, I've forgotten his name, would sit. And this still has detail that needs to be included. There's a whole bank of dip switches that have to be added here and illuminated buttons that go inside that rectangle there. But all of this other stuff is as it was on the show. Again, I'm quite pleased with the way the flashing lights turned out. Animating in Unity, which is what I'm using to do this VR environment, turned out to be a lot simpler than I thought, considering that I'm not a game developer or a programmer. I'm a architectural modeler. One thing about the detail here is I had developed these little memory sticks, I guess you'd call them, memory cards, when I was working on the comms host, and there are clear photos in the screen captures that show these sticking out here. So when it came time to do these little slots, it seemed natural to put those in. But after I had done that, I then found some screen captures which showed that this slot is in fact a printer outlet, and paper sort of comes out of that. I guess one day I'll remove these memory cards and possibly put some paper in there. But I just like the way that these look. So for now, I've left that in place. Some of the detail on this was difficult to capture or to discern from the photos. I don't know how accurate I am on these little metal buttons and so on. Some of the writing in here was very difficult to make out. So, if somebody has a better idea of what that should say, I'd happily incorporate it into the model. These, actually, interestingly, these lights, I think they're called Sorella, and I found some pretty good reference online for these. They were designed in the 70s, I think, by an Italian designer. Under here, or at the bottom here, you can see this is where the original electrical cable would come out. But for the TV show, they routed the cable down through the bottom, and then who knows how maybe there was batteries inside the table. So that's the lights. Now these corner units are pretty much the same here, and here. This one is the only one that had this additional display here on top. And likewise with some of the other detail. This grid is spot on, but some of these shapes are a little bit guesswork. The colors and the quantity is correct. It's just that the actual shape was difficult to make out from the photos. Now, where will we go? I think last time I did show the spacer-mount liquid dispenser. Yep. The other thing that I've added to the scene this time around is these containers. And what you can do with these containers is you can actually pick them up. So with your controllers, remember you've got a button to interact with the menu, and then you've got these side buttons, and you use those to grip things. And then this top button is for teleporting. So to grip something, you press these side buttons, not the trigger, but these side buttons. So you put your hand in the object, and then pull on the side buttons, and then grip it, and then you can let go, and it falls. And so this is where if we look at the menu, you can see down here we have the different strengths of gravity, and by default it's set to moon gravity, which is 1.6 meters per second. So if I go back to the menu, if I go to Earth gravity and then do the same thing, you can see it falls more realistically as per Earth gravity. And then if I go to Jupiter gravity and then drop it, it does that. And so Jupiter gravity, 24 meters per second, almost 2.5 times more than Earth. And then if we go to Sun gravity, we're almost, 30 times Earth's gravity. So I turn that off. And now try to drop that with Sun gravity. It's just crazy. So I'll go back to moon gravity, and I can teleport here, and I can throw that around. Now, I've got two of those containers up here. Let's just walk up the stairs instead of just teleporting all the way up. And in fact, I've added little screws to the bottom of the steps. I found a screen capture that showed something like that. So we'll go up the stairs, and we have two containers here which we can pick up, throw around, and let's even turn gravity off, so no gravity, bottom right. And so now that floats around, and we can, oops, I teleported. Sorry if that was confusing. I accidentally teleported onto the actual container, which put me up through the ceiling. So we've got zero gravity there. Now, one of the disappointing things, let's put that back to moon. One of the disappointing things about having interactive objects in this interior set is that for this interior set, I'm using pre-baked lighting. Because these panels are all illuminated, Unity can't calculate that lighting in real time. So I've chosen to use pre-baked lighting, and it takes about 10 hours to render this pre-baked lighting, and then it applies it as textures onto every surface in this interior set. And so it looks fantastic. I like the way that this pre-baked lighting looks. But unfortunately, if anything is going to be interactive, it can't use pre-baked lighting. It has to use dynamic lighting. So this is not using any of this lighting on the wall, and it's just using sort of some ambient light, which unfortunately makes it look very flat and really quite ugly. But that's until I work out how to do the lighting better, maybe even dynamic lighting for the whole scene. I'm stuck with this really unattractive, unflattering lighting for these containers. But still, it's worth having them to experiment with gravity and throw things around. And you know, you can see how it works there. I mean, ideally, I would have these things as possibly being dynamic, so you can move them around, and then if something hits them, they would fall off. But I just can't make those dynamic because then they will look just as bad as the lighting that's on this. I would love to have the doors openable and closable as well, but then again, the lighting on them would look as terrible as this. So I'm in a bit of a quandary at the moment regarding that. So okay, so in here we've added the tables, some of the electronics, the lighting, the computer glyphs. Now over here, Commander Koenig's desk, I haven't finished the electronics on this desk, as I promised in my first video that I would within a week. That hasn't happened. But I have added an additional drawer here and the TV/monitor display. Now, you can see here, this is one of the iconic, I guess, screensavers in the television show that they have on generic computer screens. If I come over here, you can see it's the same graphic symbol. And then if I come over to this monitor, I have the first few minutes of the season 1 episode. So here I don't have that iconic graphic image, but on these two I do. Now the interesting thing with this, let me get a bit closer. In trying to recreate this graphic symbol, it looked to me that this was really an image in perspective, in 3D perspective. It's as though a 3D camera was flying over a two-dimensional landscape of this sort of geometric pattern. So to recreate this, I tried doing exactly that. I tried creating, instead of these squares getting smaller and smaller and smaller as they go to infinity, I tried recreating this as a two-dimensional checkerboard pattern of regularly spaced squares. And then I placed a camera in 3D space above that two-dimensional plane. And surprisingly, I got almost exactly what this graphic symbol should be, or this graphic image is in the TV show. So I was really happy with the way that I was able to deconstruct what was actually happening in the original graphic symbol and create it in proper 3D, and then apply it as a 2D picture on these monitors. Likewise, with some of this imagery here, I had a really good screen capture of this faceplate. So this is all pretty accurate. Whereas if I go over here, this stuff I really couldn't see very clearly, and some of it is guesswork. The writing, the colors and all that sort of stuff is pretty obvious from the screenshots. So let's come over here. Now, I can't remember if in the first walkthrough I had these glass card holders. Now, again, this is a bit of a limitation probably of my knowledge of Unity, but also Unity's shader doesn't do refractive glass. I did have a look on the Unity asset store for some refractive shader add-ins, and there were some, but I don't think they were compatible with VR. So as a result, this doesn't refract light and it looks kind of flat and unconvincing. Now, over there on that glass shelf, I was able to fake what the refraction might look like on the edge, and that one looks actually okay, even though it's faked. But I wasn't able to fake this one. Now, over here, we have our globe, the iconic globe from the TV show. Now, I added to this globe, if I go to the menu, over here we've got show moon, and you can see the texture becomes the moon. Now, from the first walkthrough, I pointed out that the North Pole and the South Pole had this really unfortunate artifact in the texture, which had, because the craters at the North Pole never received sunlight, the bottom of the craters were all black, and it just looked really bad. So I had a go at trying. So this texture here now is a version where I tried to patch the craters with better versions, and I'm not happy with what happened in this version either. But basically what I did was I took craters from down here and I just copied them up to there. And it actually looks better than the black craters that were in the original, but I can see where there's a transition, and I know that it's wrong. So I'm actually in the process of fixing this. I found a very high resolution texture of the moon, and I'm in the process of, with Photoshop, going into every one of the little black craters and using the what's it called, the clone tool, I think it's called the clone tool, to manually sort of fill in each of the black regions with this, with a generic grey texture color. Now that's taking a really long time. It's actually aggravating my RSI in my right elbow. So I'm not doing that very quickly, and it's not going to happen for quite a few weeks before I finish it. But once I've done that, then it will be a much more natural transition to the North Pole, and there won't be those black artifacts that the original texture had. So that's a work in progress. So if I go to the menu and bring back the Earth globe. Now, okay, so what else have we got? Over here, this back display in Commander Koenig's office. Now this graphic symbol is exactly the same as that one. Different radius here, so you end up getting stuff chopped off in the corners. But that's that. Now you can see up the top I've got a bit of a grill happening. From a distance it just becomes grey, but when you get close you can see that it's a grill of some kind. And then down here, this display with sort of aluminium on the edges, and a little bit of depth to all the little things in there. So that's new. Haven't made any changes to this, although I did, let me just rotate, getting tangled in my cable, although I did find a guy in big screen, and he knows who he is, who has also modelled the Space 1999 command mission, and he's also modelled the Eagle transporter and all sorts of things. And his solution in here, I'm not sure if he found images, maybe from season 2, which showed actually the old-fashioned the spinning computer tapes, whatever, in this location. And so his version of the comms post has got computer tapes in here, and I kind of like that idea actually, but I just haven't found any reference that shows that. Maybe it's in season 2. I'll have to have a look. But this is, as I was able to screen capture from season 1. Now I don't know. These symbols are all, I think, pretty accurate. The 7A is. That last little symbol, I couldn't tell whether that was a G or an S, or don't know what it was supposed to be. So that may not be quite right. The other thing I noticed more recently is I think the depth of this clock and this flip clock here in the TV show, I think it might be a little bit deeper. I'll have to investigate that further, possibly push this further in, and likewise with that. But as I say, I haven't touched this for quite a while, so I don't know when I'll check that out. And then the latest thing that I've added is this glass shelf from the TV show. And in fact, if I come over here, if I turn on the screenshots, you can see there's my glass shelf, and here's the glass shelf from the TV show. They used crystals and some sort of gems and whatever it is. Now I don't have any 3D models of this sort of stuff, and trying to I wouldn't know where to begin. I mean, this is probably the best photo I've got of this, and I really need multiple photos to be able to model it. So I'm not even going to attempt to model these rocks the way they are here. So what I ended up doing, if I just turn those off, is I do photogrammetry as well, which is the process of finding an object and taking hundreds of photos of it, and then pumping those photos through some software, photogrammetry software, to make a three-dimensional mesh, and then it takes the textures of it applies textures from the photo onto the mesh. And so I've done that to some boulders from my a nearby park, and these boulders are actually maybe a meter wide. But the problem with these boulders, because they are a meter wide, is I can't photograph underneath them. So the mesh for all of these boulders has no bottom to it. So I can't just place them onto the glass and expect it to look realistic. So that's why I included this timber base. Now, since I had the timber bases, it then seemed natural to put in a little label on each one. Now, for the observant among you, you can see my little Easter egg, a little bit cheeky, TMA1 from 2001, Tycho Magnetic Anomaly 1. Now, I know, obviously, Space 1999 and 2001 don't exist in the same universe, but I thought it was cute. And so all of these names come from come from 2001. So TMA1, Tycho Magnetic Anomaly. Clavius Base is where I think the American base was. Yeah, I think that was the American base. Now, in the TV show, there's some Russians, and I think they had a base called Chelenko Base. There was another base that 2001 didn't talk about, but I think The Sentinel, which was the short story that was the precursor to the main 2001 story, it had a base called Serenitatis base. And then I think they also mentioned Mare Crisium, and then there's also Tycho Crater as well, which was mentioned in 2001. So I don't know. I might, if I find some nice rocks that I can scan, and maybe I can scan them full 360 if they're small enough, so that I can turn them over and scan the bottom. I might replace all of this and get rid of these wooden things and just have it sitting on the glass. I kind of still like the idea of having this Tycho, the TMA1 sitting, half excavated out of a boulder. Because I mean, this thing was supposed to be, buried in the moon for millions of years. So who knows? One day I may get rid of those timber bases and have just rocks sitting on the glass. But for now, this is as it is. And I like the TMA1 reference. I'm standing on the table here. Interestingly, my actual ceiling is right there. What else is new? I think I changed these lights to be warm rather than cool. This hasn't changed since the first version. And that's it for now. I guess there'll be another walkthrough in about another 3 months. Who knows? I really do want to pause on this Space 1999 project and possibly start on a recreation of the Jupiter 2 set from Lost in Space. But that one will be a long way off. I'm sort of halfway through collecting as much information that I can of that set, plans, photos, all sorts of things. But that project is for the future. Okay, thank you, and see you next time.